Right now, the Ukrainian armed forces are unleashing the machine of death. Russia has been hit by a hellish catastrophe. Moscow is already trembling. The arms production line is running at full capacity. This has never happened before. The Ukrainian armed forces have received the green light. The Russian Federation should prepare itself. Our forces are breaking through. An urgent and harsh US strike on Russia. Trump has made an emergency decision. The order is already on the table. Putin was hit from where he least expected. The Kremlin has gone too far. A sharp US turnaround. A course set for the Tatars. Total support for Ukraine. You will be shocked when you hear what exactly was decided in Washington. Compromises are over. The bunker dweller is losing his last hope. At this very moment, catastrophic damage is being dealt to the enemy. Russian commanders are in a stupor. The Ukrainian armed forces are setting deadly traps. Equipment is burning. Regions are ablaze. Iron Avengers are on the hunt. This new weapon of ours finished off Putin's army. A sensation. Russia's deep rear is burning. The Ukrainian armed forces have struck the enemy. Hundreds of targets eliminated at once. The dictator screamed when he heard what exactly Ukraine managed to hit. All this and more in our upcoming report. Hotspot. Urgent. Weapon of retribution. Ukraine has dropped a real bombshell. A secret assembly line, the latest models that no one else has. A triumph for the Ukrainian armed forces. This is a mega weapon that will turn the tide of the front. Nothing like this has ever happened before. What new developments have made everyone in the Kremlin tremble with fear? All the details in our report.
The Ukrainian defense industry is gaining momentum. Ukraine is becoming a world leader in weapons production.
Europe must help Ukraine become a steel porcupine that no aggressor can overcome.
The Security Service of Ukraine has demonstrated new Sea Baby maritime drones, which have already been tested in combat. The upgraded babies are capable of traveling over 1,500 kilometers and carrying up to 2 tons of cargo. 2 versions have been presented. One is equipped with a machine gun mount and an automatic target recognition and tracking system. The second is the Grad maritime platform with a 10-round multiple launch rocket system.
Our drones have changed the balance of power in the Black Sea and have proven their effectiveness. The new generation of Sea Baby is even more effective. Therefore, the work to clear the Black Sea of the Russian fleet will continue in the future.
In addition, the upgraded drones are equipped with reinforced engines and a modern navigation system. Earlier in June 2025, new models of maritime drones were used during the strike on the Crimean Bridge. We
approached by land, approached across the water surface, and in 2025 we went in underwater. There were 2 strikes, each with a force equivalent to 1.1 tons of TNT. As a result, it suffered serious damage. Its key supports, the so-called piers. Essentially, the bridge is currently operating with a load limit of no more than 5 tons. Trucks are moving across it. The enemy is not conducting any military logistics there.
Ukraine's allies are in no hurry when it comes to supplying long-range missiles that the armed forces of Ukraine could use to destroy legitimate military targets of the occupiers. Deep in the Russian rear,
the story in the Wall Street Journal claiming that the US has supposedly approved the use of Ukrainian long-range missiles to strike deep inside Russia. Fake news. The US has nothing to do with these missiles.
Kyiv, for its part, has focused on producing a wide range of its own long-range missiles and drones, which are regularly used to strike Russian territory.
It's just a nightmare, nothing more than a bad dream.
It's turning.
I absolutely love
This. Which one? 20 minutes? 20 minutes.
As of today, Ukraine produces dozens of long-range missiles each month, such as the long-range Neptune and Foaming, as well as thousands of long-range and rocket-powered drones.
In order to somehow to put this war into a stalemate, to turn it into one, it is necessary to learn not only to repel enemy attacks on the front line, but also to suppress their logistics and their aviation. That's why they were needed, and I'm not even mentioning the necessity of striking at Russia's military-industrial enterprises and energy system.
Weapons manufacturers also haven't forgotten about the Ukrainian goddess of war, Bodana. This year, Ukraine became the world leader in the production of self-propelled artillery systems.
Artillery remains the queen, and Ukraine has mastered the production of howitzers.
Despite the role of FPV drones on the front line, artillery has several advantages over drones. First of all, range of fire. For Bodana, this figure is 45 kilometers. Shells are inexpensive and immune to radio jamming, and they are also extremely effective against enemy infantry.
The warhead, so these are completely different capabilities. They can strike both enemy personnel and accordingly equipment and main points of permanent or temporary enemy deployment. If the epi-drone targets a single objective, meaning a specific serviceman of the occupying army, then accordingly the capabilities of the Bodana self-propelled artillery are for area strikes. In other words, this is what holds back the so-called local assaults by Russian occupiers.
A protracted war on defense. In such a situation, quick and effective solutions are required from Ukrainian military engineers. While the Russian occupiers continue to dream of demilitarization, Ukraine is gradually becoming the world's largest arms forge. At
This very moment, Trump has gone all in. The US leader shocked the world with his decision. This will bring Moscow to its knees. The armed forces of Ukraine have been given the green light. Russia will be engulfed by a fiery whirlwind. Trump will tolerate no more. The Kremlin dictator has gone too far. What awaits Moscow now? Sensational details coming up next.
The cancellation of the meeting in Budapest, the green light for strikes with long-range British and French missiles on Russian territory, and sanctions against the two largest oil companies of the gas station country. Donald Trump has finally seen the light and decided to crush Putin. What is really happening in the White House?
I've always felt that Putin wants everything, not just a part. I think now he's ready to negotiate. We don't want him to get everything.
As soon as the green light was given from the Oval Office, the Senate Foreign Relations Committee also sprang into action. There, they supported 3 legislative initiatives aimed against Russia, which started the war in Ukraine. Among other things, this includes recognizing the Russian Federation as a state sponsor of terrorism and the use of frozen assets. However, the same Senate admits that it's not possible to vote on these bills due to the government shutdown. Nevertheless, in just one day, it seems that across the ocean, things have turned around on the street. They've turned their backs on Putin, but as analysts claim, it's too early to award Trump the Hero's Medal. Donald, as before, doesn't want Ukraine to win. He just wants everything to end as soon as possible along the current line, pin a great peacemaker badge to his lapel, and shift all subsequent problems into the hands of the Europeans.
Trump is acting according to his own logic, meaning Ukraine wants peace. It said yes. We stop at the line of demarcation. In other words, that's it. Ukraine is ready to take the shortest and simplest path. Russia doesn't want that. So, according to Trump's logic, pressure needs to be put on Russia. What happened in the form of these sanctions? At the same time, according to Trump's logic, if tomorrow the Russians say, okay, we are ready to negotiate a ceasefire, they will go to these negotiations and will be ready to lift the sanctions. And perhaps some other relaxations as well. He hopes that with the help of sanctions, he can get through to Putin's reason. He'll say, okay, we're losing, you're losing, let's look for ways to get out of this situation.
Trump, who thinks like a businessman, analysts say, failed to take into account the main thing, the logic of Putin. A dictator doesn't care about millions of Russians becoming impoverished or about economic stagnation. He has his own priorities, and he has no intention of changing them, neither under the threat of punishment nor the promise of reward.
He lives for war, you see. The future of the Russian economy, oil prices, none of that bothers him at all. There will always be money for the front, for the army, for recruiting soldiers. Money will be found, and the soldiers themselves will be found, because they've been found for 3-4 years already, and more will be found. That's all he thinks about, and he probably believes that everything is going just fine. As for what will happen later when something eventually collapses, when people start living badly, there won't be any gasoline or something else will be missing. They'll find gasoline for the tanks and everyone else will have to walk. That essentially is his entire logic. He doesn't feel sorry for anyone, not just Ukrainians. He doesn't even feel sorry for Russians. So really, what is there to be surprised about?
So far, the only one to react to the demonstrative turnaround across the ocean has been the unpredictable Dmitry Medvedev, whom analysts say isn't worth reacting to at all. On the contrary, not a single word has come from any official representatives, and most likely in Moscow they will pretend that everything is going according to plan.
Obviously, for now, they don't have any kind of response. Medvedev plays the role of the bad cop and is rude to Trump. But as we've already seen this year, Putin and Trump are never rude to each other. They're all politeness, only teasing each other a little. That's why I don't think that Putin, even if he makes some radical statements, will insult Trump or say that we are now enemies. He'll say something like, well, he got a bit carried away, we'll talk, we'll come to an agreement. I don't think we're in for something like him coming out crying and saying, that's it, it's over for me. I renounce power, I lost the war, new sanctions. I've been crushed.
Will Vladimir Putin be able to roll everything back? And will he fall for empty promises and stalling tactics? Trump? It's obvious to analysts that, unlike during the Anchorage meeting, the US president realized much faster that the desired outcome wasn't going to happen. But it seems the pendulum has swung. India and China, according to the media, will be forced to give up Russian black gold.
Right now, the front is exploding. Russia is facing a catastrophe, and the armed forces have set a deadly trap. Enemy equipment is burning urgently. Columns are turning into scrap metal. Putin is in a panic, but Ukrainian fighters are breaking through deeper and deeper, striking inside Russia itself. Regions are ablaze. Panic and chaos reign among the occupiers. What is happening at the front, right at this very moment? All the details coming up.
Russian mechanized assaults are suffering a complete collapse. Equipment is burning in all directions and the occupiers are being forced onto motorcycles. Strikes by the Ukrainian armed forces on Russian rear positions are crippling Putin's economy, and Russian citizens are now openly calling to strike the Kremlin.
The Kremlin isn't here, you need to strike the Kremlin. They released the coordinates.
Zaporizhia is under threat. What all military analysts have been talking about has begun. And also a thorn in the Kremlin side. Pokrovsk is holding on, drawing Russian reserves to itself and preventing Moscow from gaining a strategic advantage along the entire front line. Russia is trying to take advantage of the last weeks of good weather to advance as much as possible at the front. This is exactly why the enemy suffered record losses of heavy equipment in October compared to the entire year of 2025. Just in the past 24 hours, 2 tanks and more than a dozen armored fighting vehicles were destroyed.
With small infantry assault groups, it is theoretically possible to advance, but certainly not to any significant depth. This may indicate what is happening right now. An attempt at a mechanized offensive aimed at breaking through the front line by at least 6 to 8 kilometers in width, just as it is written in military textbooks and combat regulations, and to advance at least several dozen kilometers. Heavy equipment is used for this purpose.
The most well-prepared assault units, both in terms of equipment and personnel, are traditionally concentrated in the Pokrovsk direction. However, round-the-clock attacks have not brought the occupiers the desired result.
The enemy's forces are active on all sectors of the front, including the Pokrovsk direction, which remains truly the hottest spot, and the Russian army is attacking here more than anywhere else. We're saying that the Russians are unlikely to repeat such frontal actions today because it's clear that the 51st Combined Arms Army, which is attacking in this direction, already has plenty of other problems. And
the main one is the encirclement of Russian soldiers near Dobropilya. It's been about a month there already. Moscow continues to try to transfer reserves, which significantly disperses the efforts of the Russian grouping. As a result, all they've managed to achieve regarding Pokrovsk is the presence of small sabotage and reconnaissance groups on the outskirts of the city.
indeed, counter-sabotage operations are very active today. Accordingly, the main task for the defense forces is to drive the Russians out of urban buildings as much as possible. Because starting urban combat is the Russians' objective at this stage, to gain a foothold in the city, accordingly, in order to wait for reinforcements from other forces.
At the same time, it seems that another hotspot could become the Zaporizhia direction. After Pokrovsk, this is the second place where the Russians are trying to break through with large mechanized columns. However, they are also unable to achieve any results there. The situation has reached the point where even the ZVN correspondents, who usually praise all the wise decisions of the command, have been forced to change.
Their rhetoric refers to the specific way they use language to communicate, persuade, or influence others. This involves selecting words and structuring sentences in a manner that is intended to have a particular effect on the audience. By employing various rhetorical techniques, such as repetition or the use of questions, they aim to make their message more compelling and memorable, ensuring that their ideas are clearly understood and leave a lasting impression.
However, in the high offices of the occupiers, losses have long since stopped being counted. The main thing is to ensure progress at any cost, and where there is none, at least to show the necessary determination.
I believe it is extremely important for the enemy to get as close as possible to the regional center of Zaporizhia. Control over this settlement would not only allow Vladimir Putin to claim that he controls the entire Zaporizhia region, but also seriously damage the infrastructure, primarily the industry of this. The regional center in the south of Zaporizhia region is significant enough. The large distance between settlements means that the enemy has the opportunity to maneuver forces and resources.
At the same time, today's maneuvers are mostly aimed at controlling Ukrainian logistics. After all, a major weapons hub in the form of the regional center allows the Ukrainian armed forces to quickly deliver ammunition and reserves.
In the Poltavka-Malinovka-Uspenovka sector, Russian infantry regularly conducts assault operations, mainly using convicts and other expendables. The logistic situation is about the same as in all other directions. The Russian armed forces are trying to control all transport routes, setting up carousels with FPV drones, including using optics.
However, attempts to quickly rush through the kill zone sometimes end in bizarre incidents, such as this self-destruction against a disabled vehicle.
They were heading into an attack, but because of the smoke from smoke grenades, they didn't see the knocked-out armored vehicle and crashed into it. One after another.
At the same time, intense resistance continues in the Russian rear. For example, a strike by drones and Storm Shadow cruise missiles the day before appears to have permanently shut down the Bryansk chemical plant.
The results of the strike are being clarified, but according to monitoring channels, the plant has been completely destroyed. Photos of missile tail sections scattered around the area were published in Telegram channels. The Bryansk chemical plant is an important part of the Russian military-industrial complex. At this facility, the occupiers produced gunpowder, explosives and components for rocket fuel. By the way,
Ukrainian attacks on Russian military-industrial facilities seem to have annoyed Russians so much that they are finally starting to realize where the real source of all their problems lies.
The Kremlin isn't here, but it's the Kremlin you should be targeting. That's where you should strike. You've got the coordinates mixed up.
And finally, a wonderful story from the SBU. After watching yet another propaganda video about Russian light aircraft intercepting drones, the security service decided to make their own video. The specialists easily copied the coordinates, and the next drone route was set to those very locations.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism, and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now. Right now, this is a global bombshell. Trump has turned the game upside down. Putin is furious. The dictator's plane is being turned around in the sky. The meeting is falling apart at the last moment. Moscow is in panic. Washington is making its position clear. The era of compromises is over. What is really behind this scandalous decision? Why is the Kremlin losing its last hope for dialogue? And how will all this change the balance of power in the world? All the sensational details. Stay tuned.
Is Putin fooling Trump again, or is Kremlin diplomacy simply preserving tradition? The so-called summit between the Russian dictator and the American president, which, according to the latter, was supposed to take place in 2 weeks, has been postponed indefinitely. The pilot meeting between the two sides, represented by Lavrov and Rubio and supposedly scheduled for October 23rd, has already been cancelled. According to CNN, during a phone conversation between the representatives, it became clear that they see the solution to the problem in completely different ways. After this information appeared in the media, Lavrov himself responded. He essentially confirmed that he could not be at fault. He confirmed that, as before, the Russians are standing their ground.
I want to officially confirm that Russia has not changed its position compared to the understandings reached during the lengthy negotiations between Putin and Trump in Alaska. These understandings are based on the agreements reached at that time. President Trump expressed this very succinctly when he said that what is needed is a long-term, sustainable peace, not an immediate ceasefire that will lead nowhere. We remain fully committed to this formula. Faithful.
Peskov also echoed his Kremlin colleagues' fabrications, saying, how can you implement something that was never agreed upon?
You can't postpone something that was never formalized. That was never formalized. Neither President Trump nor President Putin ever specified exact dates. Serious preparation is needed, thorough preparation. You heard statements from both the American side and ours that this may take time. So, from the outset, actually, no specific deadlines were set here.
At the same time, vague statements are coming out of Moscow that do not favor Putin's visit to Budapest. They say that the trip is unsafe for the aging dictator. Since there is a risk of assassination by intelligence agencies, the journey to Hungary is a long one. And in general, the Poles, who have said they might arrest Putin, are capable of terrorist acts.
It is possible that disagreements arose between Lavrov and Rubio, and they were unable to come to an agreement on some important issue.
one that needed to be brought to the leaders for approval. This is absolutely realistic and possible. But on the other hand, there may be other hidden factors at play here. This is more in line with the style of Russian diplomacy. To create confusion once again, make the situation uncertain, and then boldly and courageously step forward to resolve some issues. In other words, to concede yet another completely minor and non-essential position.
Meanwhile, Volodymyr Zelensky is planning to attend the meeting of the Coalition of the Willing, which partners are hastily organizing in London. October 24th. The media, citing a draft of the EU's conclusions, report that at the meeting, European leaders will formalize their decision to provide financial support to Ukraine for the next 3 years using frozen Russian assets.
Obviously, the expectation is not that we will be fighting for 3 years. The expectation is to put pressure on Russia at these negotiations. That is the real calculation. The goal is to force Russia to listen to Ukraine's demands, to say, look, Ukraine has 140 billion plus its own funds, plus resources from our partners. Altogether, this could amount to 200 to 300 billion over 3 years. These are extremely comparable sums to what Russia currently has.
In addition, according to media reports, Italy will soon join NATO's initiative to purchase American weapons for Ukraine. Previously, its authorities were opposed. With the frozen Russian funds, Ukrainians also plan to purchase 25 Patriot systems from the United States, which will protect Ukrainian cities from attacks by the Russian army.
Sensational! Ukraine and the US are deploying super weapons to the front and the world is in shock. It's not just an analog of the Shaheds. The new system completely rewrites the rules of the game. This weapon inflicts catastrophic damage with its precision and sheer numbers. The enemy is in panic, the headquarters is stunned. No one knows yet how to counter this. What does this mean for the front, and will the Kremlin be able to withstand this blow? All the explosive details. Watch now.
The Ukrainian Shahed has reached a new level. Now the drone is equipped with advanced Western guidance and control systems, and production will be established both in the US and in Europe.
It will soon go into mass production in Ukraine, the United States of America, and Germany. The press is reporting on this. The American company Auterion, together with a Ukrainian company, has successfully tested the long-range kamikaze drone Artemis LM-20. The drone is equipped with an artificial intelligence system, self-guidance, and can hit targets at a distance of up to 1,600 kilometers.
At the same time, the warhead weighs 45 kilograms, which is more than enough to destroy most military targets. Our military adds enemy equipment and hardware to the list.
The key point here is that it uses artificial intelligence, and in fact, let's just say the price is quite reasonable, to put it mildly. And if the tactical and technical specifications, such as speed and flight altitude, are met, and as I understand it they are, these factors have already been studied and tested, then of course things will become a bit easier for us.
It is also known that the main feature of Artemis is its navigation and targeting system based on the onboard Skynote N computer from the American company Auterion. As noted, it is precisely this system that allows the drone to target and strike even when satellite navigation fails, and it ensures high accuracy during the final stage of flight.
The enemy's countermeasures are used to a greater extent. Jamming of GPS signals, in other words, this is roughly speaking what helps to target more accurately. If we are talking, for example, about control channels, then yes, they do have certain systems that can limit the capabilities of control channels of piloted drones. We are talking about a system that, to a greater extent, enables automatic flight thanks to, for example, the onboard equipment installed on it. Therefore, here we are saying that thanks to such capabilities, this system can bypass the enemy's electronic warfare and hit the target with minimal error due to the visual guidance system installed directly on this UAV.
At the same time, the company's developers have already stated that the drone has undergone battlefield testing. Both the Ukrainian side and its production partners have already recognized this.
This drone was created together with an unnamed Ukrainian company for security reasons. And it has already undergone full-scale testing, which, according to the company's statement, included ground launch, navigation with and without GPS, long-range transit, and ground activation.
It is worth noting that the art The Artemis ALM-20 also features a nose camera, additional antennas, and apparently an electric engine, which experts note is a rather unusual solution. This is done in order to achieve high results with smaller scale production by ensuring more precise hits on the target. After all, the camera at the final stage of the UAV's operation will allow it to strike almost without missing, including bypassing possible anti-drone defenses.
First and foremost, they will be intended for and used to destroy those targets that affect the military power of the terrorist state and its ability to conduct combat operations in Ukraine.
At the same time, joint production with the United States is far from the only international achievement of the Ukrainian defense industry. Most often, Western partners are willing to invest specifically in drones. Denmark became the first country in the world to get involved in this matter. It became a pioneer in the field of joint defense production with Ukraine and was the first to invest initially in enterprises in Ukraine, and now has allocated more than 67 million euros to establish Ukrainian defense enterprises on Danish territory. Finland, also one of the first, took up joint production with Ukraine. Back in November 2024, the Finnish defense consortium Soma Defense established a drone manufacturing enterprise on Finnish territory, in partnership with 4 Ukrainian companies. The United Kingdom has also placed an emphasis on drones. Plans to launch joint production on British soil were announced several months ago by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer.
We are currently working out the details in decisions regarding joint weapons production with our partners. This is a serious decision with those who are providing the most assistance. Specific projects, tangible benefits for our defense. In the future, there will also be production facilities localized in Ukraine. Facilities that help protect our skies. I want to thank our partners for their interest in such cooperation with Ukraine and with our industry.
At the same time, the EU has allocated 1.5 billion euros for a defense plan in cooperation with Ukraine, Bloomberg reports. The main goal of the program is to optimize the procurement and production of weapons, including joint efforts with Ukraine. So it seems that soon there will be a significant increase in joint Ukrainian-Western developments in the arsenal of the Ukrainian armed forces.
Shock! Ukrainian drones are devastating Russia to dust for pennies. Iron Avenger struck a blow that made Putin's blood run cold. In just one night, hundreds of enemy targets were destroyed. How Ukraine is turning the tide of the war and bringing Moscow to its knees with ultra-cheap technologies. Watch the incredible footage and details in the report. At a
speed of over 300 kilometers per hour. These are the movement parameters of the Ukrainian Interceptor drone Sting. The main purpose of this little guy is to destroy Russian Shaheds, which the Kremlin is unleashing on Ukraine by the hundreds. Sting is entirely a product of the Ukrainian military industry. Its cost is about $2,500, which is several times cheaper than Russian Shaheds. This is what makes this Interceptor drone indispensable for Ukrainian air defense. Just a year ago, this method of shooting down Shaheds seemed impossible. Now, however, everything has changed dramatically.
What once seemed laughable has turned into an inexpensive and crucial element of Ukraine's defense. While Russia bombards its cities with increasingly powerful waves of explosive drones, Ukraine is more and more often using cheap interceptors to stop them. This weapon shot down 150 attack drones during a single recent bombardment. Now, Ukraine aims to produce 1,000 interceptors.
One of the world's leading news outlets, Business Insider, writes that Sting-type interceptor drones, which Ukraine is now actively producing, could turn the tide of the war since they cost much.
The total number of these drones is considerably less than the number of Shaheds, which are a type of unmanned aerial vehicle that have been deployed in significant quantities. In comparison, these drones are not as numerous as the Shaheds that have been reported in recent operations.
The overall cost of a strike drone itself, which is a type of unmanned aerial vehicle specifically designed and used to attack either civilian or military targets, has directly led to the scaling up and wider adoption of such technological solutions in recent years, since
At the beginning of 2024, Ukrainian drone engineers have actively started converting quadcopters into drones capable of destroying Shaheds.
The design of interceptor drones is evolving rapidly. For example, the Sting is equipped with a warhead that accelerates to 340 kilometers per hour using 4 rotating blades. This sensor-guided interceptor, produced by the Ukrainian drone manufacturer Wild Hornets, resembles a handheld missile, and it's small enough to fit in a travel bag. Other interceptors resemble small gliders. The crews who launch them need to react instantly to threats. A Sting pilot said that his team heads out at night based on tips from reconnaissance groups, with only 10 minutes to spare, to intercept approaching Russian drones before they move out of range.
The improvement of interceptor drones never stops, not even for a minute. Success rates range from 30% for some interceptors to 80% or even 90%. Success depends on a large number of factors: the type of targets, the timing of the interception, the pilot's skills, and many others. Interest in and demand for interceptors has surged sharply not only in Ukraine, but also among NATO countries. After the first Russian drones crossed the Polish border, especially since the Kremlin continues to invest huge sums in the development and production of strike drones. Shahed, Ukraine and NATO countries want to have an effective and, most importantly, inexpensive countermeasure.
We are currently negotiating with some of the major key leaders in certain segments worldwide. Thank you very much for your attention around the world. To companies that are interested in purchasing our drones, some technologies, for example, that we have adopted from foreign partners we have worked with are integrated into our solutions. And there is serious interest because we have the largest, unfortunately for us, but fortunately for the world and for those who manufacture weapons, the largest testing ground in the world of military technologies.
During one of the latest attacks on Ukraine, Russia launched nearly 800 aerial targets. And according to Western intelligence estimates, the Kremlin may soon launch up to 2,000 Shaheds of various modifications. Moreover, Russia is modernizing the Shahed, and in the future, it may be able to reach speeds of up to 300 kilometers per hour. So the appearance of Ukrainian interceptor drones should simplify and make air defense operations more effective. Especially since, from a financial standpoint, Ukrainian interceptors are cost-effective to use, and victory in war always comes down to economically sound decisions.
That's all for now. For more breaking news from the front, tune in to our next episode.